Hi, 8th grade. It's Miss Dodd. Today we're going to be doing a crash course for the founding of New Orleans. I've noticed that we need to dust out the cobwebs and see how much of this early colonial Louisiana history can we remember. So I'm going to go through it super quick, and you're going to have a bunch of educating questions to test yourself. All right, let's get started. So remember, we had three countries in North America in the 17th century, so the 1600s. The Spanish, who were in the South, the French, who were in Canada, and then the British, who are on the eastern seaboard. Now, everybody was looking here, down here at the bottom, where New Orleans was, because it controlled the Mississippi River, and they wanted to find the river. And they wanted to control it because whoever controlled the river controlled trade. So we had the first person to ever see the Mississippi River. He came from Spain, and that is our friend Hernando de Soto. And he was looking for gold and silver because other Spanish conquistadors or the explorers were looking and found gold and silver in South America. So he came on an exploration through the southern North American continent, and he traveled all around. And just right when he got to the Mississippi River, right here at the very end of the Red Journey, he saw the Mississippi, but he didn't really realize that it was a river that ran so far up into the North American continent, he didn't see its importance. And then he died. But De Soto was the first European, he was Spanish, the first European to see the Mississippi River. Okay, now, 100 years later, in the mid-1700s, scratch that. Only like 15 years later, or 50 years later, at the end of the 1600s, we had LaSalle. The French had already been occupying all of this northern part in Canada. And LaSalle's job was to sail down the Mississippi because the French wanted to see how far it went. And he came all the way down to New Orleans, and he said, you know what, this is a huge river. This is super important, and I'm going to claim this entire river and the whole surrounding area for France. And so this is a picture of LaSalle. He decided to name it after King Louis XIV, so that is why Louisiana is named after King Louis, Louisiana. They are from France, which is right here. So the French came and claimed it, and eventually they had this whole blue territory here. So the French wanted it because they knew how good it was for trade. The French were fur traders and fish traders in Canada, and they wanted to continue to trade all the way up and down the river. So they were into trading. They also had very strong connections with the Native Americans, at least in the beginning. That will change more as time goes on. But in the beginning, they had strong, close connections, trading connections, economic connections with the Native Americans. And also, most importantly, they were doing fur trading. The French did not want the British or the Spanish to have control of New Orleans. So that was a very crucial spot. They wanted control of the river. Okay, the next person to come along, another Frenchman. So from this country right here, Iberville. He set sail in the late 1600s and came over and was looking to found a colony. So Iberville and Bienville were from France, but they had lived a long time in Canada up here near Montreal. And King Louis XIV said, you guys go down there. You understand the North American continent. Go and find me a place to settle. So Iberville came, searched, and put two settlements in southern Louisiana, or I guess now it's present-day Mississippi, but in Biloxi and in Mobile. which is in Alabama today. Both of those colonies failed, and it wasn't until his brother came, Bienville, who set up New Orleans, and that is why Bienville is called the founder of New Orleans. One thing we talked a lot about in depth last week and today is the Code Noir. So the Bienville set this up. He immediately started shipping over slaves after he founded the city in 1718. And he created a Code Noir to control and regulate the lives of slaves because he considered them to be property, the property of the white farmers that were there. They were harvesting sugarcane, and he wanted slaves to help make this port of New Orleans profitable because the French were greedy and they were always trying to turn a profit. An example of this is John Law. After Bienville left and died, John Law came in and he was called a proprietor. So he owned that colony of New Orleans and created a big company called the Mississippi Company, printed a bunch of money. All sorts of people started to invest in it. But as we learned yesterday, the Mississippi bubble grew and grew. Too much speculation, too much investment. Eventually, it popped, this bubble, and the company collapsed financially, and John Law left the colony. All right. Now, let's move on to the mid-1700s. We had the French and Indian War, which was taking place here in Canada, particularly between this red British colony area and the blue where the French are. And in the French and Indian War, remember, it's the French and Indians who are friends, so you can remember Friendian, if that helps you remember it. They were fighting the British. So together, the French and Indians were fighting the British, but France lost that war. And so they had to give a bunch of their territory away. So as you can see, all of this orange is owned by the French before the French and Indian War in 1754. And after the fact, look at how much was owned by the British in purple. And then the Spanish came in and the French gave New Orleans to the Spanish because they didn't want to give it to the British. And the Spanish had become an ally of the French during the French and Indian War. And so the French gave New Orleans to the Spanish. So the main thing you need to know, I know that's confusing. The main thing that you need to know is after the French and Indian War, the French had given New Orleans to Spain. And as you can imagine, this actually made the French pretty happy because all of this sugar farming and this plantation life with the slaves was costing the French a lot of money. So they got this colony that was very expensive off their hands, and it was taken over by the Spanish. Now, the Spanish didn't really do a great job. They had this guy, Ulloa, who was the first governor, the first Spanish governor in New Orleans, and the people who were still French didn't like him very much. He was kind of frosty. He didn't really invite them to their dances. And he was a little bit standoffish, so the people didn't like him. They rebelled against him. So the Spanish crown sent in this guy, Bloody O'Reilly, who was an Irishman, but also of Spanish nationality, who came in and put down the revolution and hung a bunch of people that were influential in that revolution against the Spanish. So hopefully that cleared everything up, but that is the chronology of the founding from De Soto, the first European to see the spot of New Orleans, all the way up from French control of it to Spanish control in the late 1700s. I hope you enjoyed watching that video, and hopefully that helps you get a little bit of the timeline in your brain. Have a great day.